Senator Whitmire.
Thank you, Mr. President and members, and I know it's been a very long day, so I will keep that in mind. Senator Lucio, this body will always defend your right to represent your district. In fact, I think Senator Coulthurst, you're representing your district. And I disagree with you, but I think all 31 members have a duty to represent their district, and I hope a personal conviction to stand for your colleagues and articulate such an important issue. Mr. President, I respect this body so much. I sit here and listen to the closing, I listen to the questions, and having grown up here in the legislature as a young man, find it just amazing that people that get here the same way by being in contested races and representing 850,000 people in a statewide official, how we can honestly so strongly disagree on a subject. You'll just think about it for a moment. How do we have the same qualifications? The Constitution has age requirements. And how can we get here? And it's marvelous to watch. What I want to point out is, as I listen to the debate, I wonder how in the world, Senator, how are we surviving without this Senate Bill 3 on the books? As I listen through the day, it's almost, if you take some of you at your word and things are as dangerous as you suggest, and why we need the bill, it's almost like we better gather our women and children and keep them near us. The truth of the matter is, the bill that you're proposing is not on our books, and we're functioning as a very safe and prosperous state. Our school system is doing well dealing with a very small transgender community. Our airlines are running unisex restrooms without any disturbance. I would suggest even in our personal households, we are sharing restrooms. People are respecting each other. In fact, Senator Coulthurst, you said an hour ago, we need expectations. That's what you're trying to describe in your legislation. We have expectations. Anywhere you go in public in this town, go to 6th Street, go to the Capitol public restrooms. We have expectations. And if you violate those expectations, we're tough. We have over 100,000 people on the sexual registration offender list. And I've looked at that list, and we cannot identify a transgender individual. They're largely Anglo heterosexual males. So I asked myself, and I'm closing by having you question it, why are we so far apart? And it's my conclusion, Mr. President, we're debating two separate topics. If you truly believe, as I believe the proponents believe, that this is about keeping a male out of a female restroom, you're doing exactly what you ought to do. And I've seen the poll, Mr. President, that 80% of Texans support that position. And as I've told you, I'm surprised it's not 100%. Where's the 20% that would answer that different than decent people would, that you and I would? The problem on the Senate floor today, and I think we've got to resolve this going forward, is some on this floor in the activist group, the 400 ministers, the opponents of the HERO ordinance, are debating whether or proposing to stop males from going into women's restrooms. And they are absolutely right and deserve a statute that says that, and I would suggest we have those on the book, and if you want to enhance them, I would be the first one to co-sponsor it and give you a hearing in the Criminal Justice Committee. But on the other side of the debate today, we have a group of senators that believe that they're representing the civil rights of their constituents, a minority, a very small group of individuals that quite frankly have lived in the shadows of our communities, in the privacy of their world, working with their school officials for years and years. So I think, Mr. President and members, some way as we go forward, we've got to all get on the same issue. And the first way I propose that we do it, Senator Coulthurst, is we've got to educate ourselves. If I went and polled the senators today, what is a transgender? What is the proper terminology or your understanding personally of a transgender? I believe I'd get 31 answers. I personally put myself to that test, and I have close transgender constituents and friends. But John, how would you define that? It says a person whose sense of personal identity and gender does not correspond with the birth sex. Terms like gender identity, terms like gender reassigned surgery are not common terminology or concepts or understandings to most of us. I'm the first to admit how complex the issue is. I'm speaking in closing and often asked, why do you speak when you already know the outcome? I can promise you I know the outcome of this vote and maybe the outcome for this session. First, I think we have a duty and hopefully a personal conviction. I'm not spending my time on this floor worrying about the NBA, the NFL, the TAB, the Houston Partnership. I'm going to close and use these last moments on behalf of the transgender families, their friends, and the people that are concerned about them. First, I want to end on a positive note to the transgender community who came here in the hundreds and were allowed 2 minutes, which I understand the confinement of the time frame. But just put yourself in their position. Their lives are being disrupted. They're being identified for often the first time in their lives. I want them to understand that this issue is not going away, that this is the beginning, not the end. I hope they understand that it is a painful win for that community to have their lives discussed in public on the Senate floor. And I just hope, Senator Coulthurst, and I understand the dedicated public servant you are, that we will do as I've challenged you at least twice. We have got to have hearings and encourage an open dialogue among people that are more informed than I am, and I believe you, on this subject matter. Let's come together and agree to enhance penalties, beef up law enforcement, do whatever we need to keep the men out of women's restroom and vice versa. I heard the discussion about women in men's restroom. I've been at a Rockets game at the Summit many times. You know how it came to a screeching halt? The city of Houston finally decided enough was enough, and now we have very strong local ordinances and penalties for women that come into men's restroom during a sports event or a concert. But while we continue to be the toughest state in the nation on sexual predators, hundreds are in our penitentiary. I personally think it's the #1 challenge for the criminal justice system, how to deal with sexual predators, because as we talk today, there's no known cure. We need to focus on that, but I would urge you, I would beg and pray that we become more informed about the transgender community, because I know the issue's not going away, and I know it's going to be the civil rights issue of the future. And I would challenge those of you who I have heard commenting today about it's a choice. I actually heard a couple of senators today say some parents encourage their children to be transgender. Then when it doesn't work, the child is damaged, they had taken hormones, and it was a disaster for that family. I hope we will visit with those families and find out that I know of families that have found out their child was transgender at a very early age, resisted it, worked against it, and finally went and sought help, and through professional help, they worked the child through the transition, and ultimately, as a grown-up, a gender reassignment surgery. I will close by saying I truly believe that other states are watching us. I think we have to be responsible, sensitive. I'm not worried about the economics as much as the TAB and the sports venue, because I know Jerry Jones and others have the resources to defend their position. I don't think a watered-down version is going to satisfy international companies or sports venues, because they are concerned about the principle of the matter, not the impact it's going to have on their venue. And I will also mention in closing, I am told that people I trust, major law firms, major technology companies, that when they do their search and they're recruiting at some of our outstanding universities, one of the questions that the young people being recruited are, what kind of sports venues you got in Texas? It's amazing to me, because see, they can make all they want. The salaries are competitive across the nation, so then they start looking at quality of life issues. Houston rates high because they like our sports venue. Another factor is, what about equality? Because the major companies will readily hire open transgender, open gay and lesbian individuals, and their friends. Go home and talk to your young people. That next generation, they don't have the hang-ups that perhaps some people in this building do. In closing, I want everyone to realize, until we have equality for all of our citizens, we're not going to have equality for any of our citizens. Mr. President, I think this has been a long day. I know it got us off some of the proposed schedules, but I think it's been a very worthwhile day and a very respectful day. And I thank you for allowing me to speak.